Okay, folks, I've got a great friend of mine on the line today to discuss all manner of the music business and his position within it. Welcome, Adam Hayward. How are you doing, Ad?
I'm really well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on here, Toby. It's an absolute pleasure and a strange experience for the interviewing to be on the other foot, as it were. So I'm quite nervous.
Well, that's kind of cool. That's kind of what I wanted it to be. I mean, as you know, we've discussed this. I've been doing a series of podcast interviews for not just my Patreon people, but going out, because like I say, across my sort of international podcast thing that I do, which was the whole idea is to try and pull back the curtain a little bit on the various areas and aspects of the music business and the entertainment business that ordinarily don't get looked at by, you know, for want of a better description, the fans or the public. Mm-hmm. And we've been friends for not a huge amount of time, but we've known each other for a few years now. And I've always really admired your humanistic, passionate, direct, and very balanced approach to reporting music. We've often had interviews. I've seen you around at Download, backstage, all the rest of it. Always impressed me as being an exceptionally talented person and very, very accessible. And I think that's talent within itself. So that's me. That's me getting the niceties out of the way. Now, you bastard. No.
Now's the tough question. Is this exactly the feedback sandwich, is it?
That's right, exactly. So what I would like to do is I'd like to go right back to the start. And can you give me and give everyone that's watching this or listening to this, can you give us a sort of potted history of where you began your passion with music? Mm-hmm. How did it initially sort of manifest itself, and you know the sort of early years, the very starts, not where you are now, how it all began?
A very competitive control of the record player at home with my siblings would be probably the best place to start. We were avid record collectors from, I think I had my first record when I was 4 or 5. I was playing records probably younger than that, maybe 3, having control of the record player. And that became really competitive within my sibling group. So we would, be like, no, it's my turn now. I want to play 3 records. It's my turn. And this would spill over to family parties to the point where I got towards sort of my very early teens, sort of, 13, 14. I'd be turning up to family parties, any kind of party, with a big box of cassettes in my hand every single time. And it's strange, during that sort of early sort of 6 to sort of 12 or 13 period, I'd be doing these, imaginary radio shows with my friend where we would, and it would always start with Maneater from Hall & Oates for some reason. I have no idea why, but we chose that one. It was very radio at the time, I would imagine. But it was that sort of like, I think for me, it was that this is a great song and I want as many people to hear it and love it as much as I do. And I think it was that connection that really sparked something in me as a young budding DJ. And having a mouth as well, and being able to sort of converse it with other people, the passion and what a song does to me, and be able to have that, express that emotional connection, I think also helped quite considerably as well. Because when I was about 14, a friend of mine who just got his driving license said, I've started a mobile disco, but I'm terrible on a microphone. Do you want to come along? And I went, yeah, all right. I'll pay you 20 quid, something like that. Which, not bad for a youngster.
When you're a kid.
When you're a kid, 20 quid.
Right?
Absolutely. Get you at least 20 fags and a bottle. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Sorry. It was saved conservatively. Not really. But he'd go, we're going to do a wedding, or we're going to do a New Year's Eve party or something like that. And I'll play the records. You can help me choose them, but I'll play the records and you can talk to the audience over the microphone. So me and my friend, every week, every single weekend, we'll be out doing all kinds of parties, some 21st, some, 18th, weddings, all kinds of stuff. And it'd be me, this 14, 15-year-old, going, doesn't the bride and groom look lovely tonight? and, come on, girls, we need you on the dance floor right now. All them sort of, all those sort of things. But it gave me a confidence to talk to people.
Yeah.
And then eventually we parted ways business wise, and I started out on my own.
Mm.
And then I started really kind of like getting into it a bit more, and sort of fast forward a few years, I ended up doing it as sort of like a part-time job, alongside my day job. But also I ended up going out to Corfu and working out there for a season, which was illuminating, to say the least. Because it was like, it was a place called Kavos, and we used to nickname it Hellas on Earthos, because it was a den of iniquity. And I really learned my chops with the audience out there, because you had to really learn how to connect with people. And all this time as well, I dabbled in a little bit of radio, not very much. And then sort of from there, really, alongside that, I was also playing in a band. So playing drums.
I did not know that about you. That was going to be one of my questions. I mean, let me interject a little bit now then. Okay. Well, before we get into the now, what did your parents think about all this?
They just let me crack on with it, because they just knew that it was something that they couldn't contain. They couldn't hold back. We would have debates in our house. I remember one debate with my dad. I was about 7, and I walked in, and we were watching every Thursday night. It was Top of the Pops. And I don't know about you, but when you were a kid and you're watching Top of the Pops with the family, we were playing the that's crap, that's good game.
Yeah,
the countdown and rubbish, a lot that one. Rubbish, a lot that one. And a song came on. I can't remember what the song was. But I remember the old man going, "What utter rubbish is this? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever." And my response to that was, "I got one thing to say to you, Dad. Bebop Palubop, I want bamboo. Explain that."
Great answer.
And he just went, "I can't." And that was the end of the debate. But we'd have lots of talks like that. We'd talk about music and the feel of music an awful lot in our house. It was like my mother didn't, but my dad did.
It sounds like you had a very musical, you were surrounded by music. I mean, inevitably, when I think about, and I've talked about this quite a lot, I was in an environment of music from a fantastic parents who had an incredibly eclectic taste, and and that was an enormous influence on me. And it was only sort of later on in my life that I realized how much of an influence it was on me. Would you say that was a similar thing for yourself?
The influence was immediate for me as a child. It was almost like, if there wasn't music in our house, I don't know what would have been. Life was very much music centric. My eldest brother is a tenor, sings tenor opera, and I was going to Gilbert and Sullivan operas from the age of from being a tiny baby to mid to late teens, going to watch these performances. So I'd seen every single Gilbert and Sullivan, all 12 of them, I think there are, several times over. Hated every single one of them, because it was just like, it's just like, oh, please. But again, I would get asked to go to their dress rehearsals with a tape recorder and record the sessions so they could listen back over them and rehearse them.
Wow.
And a really neat trick I found, I had this ghetto blaster thing that I was given for Christmas. And I found that if I pressed the record button halfway down, it would play a vocal track and record one over it at the same time. So I was getting my brother to do harmonies over the vocal track using this cassette player.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know how I discovered how it was done, but so I'd get him to sing the main theme from Gondoliers, and there is a beautiful harmony in it. So then I'd get him to sing the harmony over the top of it whilst he was listening to himself coming back over. So it was like I was always connecting to music by some means or another, even if it was indirectly. It would be it'd be stuff like that. So
wow. Well, I mean that's incredible. I mean, right there is a really great sort of insight into how music on every level can influence you as a young person, because something like, say, Gilbert and Sullivan is so specific, but it's classic. It has deep history. Without you knowing it, you've probably learned more than you care to mention because of that experience. And so all these things, I mean, would you agree with me that, or can you explain it, that all of these things go in and as part of the tapestry? I mean, even hating something, or supposedly, I mean, I don't like that word hate at all, but the kind of like loathing of something is actually as important as liking something. I mean, would you agree with that?
Well, to answer the first part of the question, I think it all adds color and shape to your music tastes. However you think, whether you like something or not, something will always resonate with you from childhood. So it's almost like when you listen to the classic radio stations, and suddenly they, not classic as in classical, but classic, pop or something like that. Something will come on there and it'll transport you right back to the moment you first listened to it. Well, that happens to me every single day. When I hear music, I mean, I listen to my albums quite a lot, and they transport me back to times when I first listened to them, and they were really, really important. And it all forms. And I'm not an advocate for hating certain types of music.
No.
Certain types of music resonate with me more than others.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to name anything because there's no point, because there might be something within that genre of music that I actually quite enjoy, like the rhythms, the beats. Like I love funk, I love soul with an absolute passion. Bobby Womack, 110th Street. Great track. Anything of the old sort of 70s Quincy Jones productions, Lalo Schifrin, the John Barry, big composers, big soundstage, even Mike Post, my strange and odd musical tastes even go to television themes of the 1970s and 80s.
Oh, mate, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I mean, that whole era, I mean, I guess this is kind of part of the same discussion, isn't it? Is that I think, when you start to evolve as a music fan, it's very hard to, and I think it's a mistake. And I don't think actually really in reality we do it. I think we just absorb everything that's around us, and that becomes part of that tapestry, and your tastes develop because of it. But I'm the same as you. I think it's very important to keep an open mind and to appreciate everything. I mean, I think it's kind of crazy how you get defined by the clothes you wear and the hair on your head. And it's kind of odd, they've only got lengthier areas of what style it is. People think you're one sort of thing. And that's kind of a peculiarity of human and sort of, I guess the human experience. But, I would say something like, I mean, I'm fascinated by this concept that you went went and saw Gilbert and Sullivan, because it is a, it is a I would say that's a wonderful education without you knowing it.
Oh, I'd agree. I'd absolutely agree. For me, it was that. Listening to Gilbert and Sullivan on constant. And then don't forget, when we were at home, my oldest brother, when he lived at home, I was very young when he lived at home because he's 13 years older than me. So he left home when I was quite young. But he would sit there practicing his conducting, because he was also a music director as well. It was, at that point, he was training to be a musical director. So he'd be like... at least with his headphones on the cassette player, listening to, I don't know, Strauss or probably Gilbert and Sullivan, knowing him because he was a huge GNS fan. And our music tastes, mine and his, were like just complete worlds apart. But the passion was where our similarities lay. Yeah. We could be both passionate about music, just different kinds of music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where my objectivity came from, I think. It was like the ability for me to go, you know what? This doesn't sit well in my ears, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't sit well in my listeners' ears.
Yeah.
And I love, I love the oddity and the strangeness of music, the way that it completely changes people's conceptions about itself all the time, and challenges people all the time as well. And that's what I love about music the most, really.
And I agree. I mean, let me just ask you this question then, which is something I ask, quite a lot of my guests really, is that there is a certain, or is there a certain, or do you recognize that certain spark, that unknown quality that drives certain people like yourself and me? Because I don't think we're very different. I think we just have different perspectives. We have different approaches.
And haircuts.
I'm physical. I physically write songs. You play them, and you've got a passion. I think it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
But do you feel? Because this is what fascinates me. It's about the drive and ambition that surrounds people wanting to get into the music business. Can you put your finger on why? And is it solely to do with the appreciation of music, or is it driven by other aspects?
It's my emotional connection to, how can I put it, to melody, to lyrics, to, those chord changes, those clever little, what they call hooks these days in music that get you. I'll give you a very recent example. There's a band called Lavara, and I heard Lavara for the first time. I did my usual thing, got sent through, didn't read the paperwork, just played it and went, shit, this is just unbelievable. And what got me about that particular track, it's called Automatic, to give them a little bit of a plug. What it did was it kind of like excited me at the beginning. I was like, this is good. Oh, the lyrics are really, I like the way they turn their phrase. I like the melody. I love the riff. It's great. Yeah. And then it was almost like, I know where I want this song to go. I really hope they're going where I think it's going. And when they either hit that or exceed that expectation, when they hit that magic chorus, I visibly punched the air with excitement, which I did with that particular. I'm like, fucking yes! It's like, yes, they did it. It's brilliant. I love it. They've done exactly what I wanted with this song to do, and that's to excite me on an emotional level, to get me going. I remember hearing "Let's Go Crazy," Prince, first time, 1984 Purple Rain album. And I remember the first time I ever heard that, I absolutely lost my mind when the guitar solo kicks in at the end of it.
Mm.
And I just remember sitting there, air guitar, with my eyes closed, and just being completely immersed in it, in those little magic moments. They don't have to be virtuoso moments. They just need to be good, clever things, because music, all it is just an instrumentation of appealing on an emotional level to people. If you look at it from a very basic point.
I would totally agree with that. But I want to go deeper with this question, because I don't just mean about your passionate appreciation of music and the spark that contains within that, because that is so obvious with you. You are a prime example of someone that's absolutely absorbed by the passion, and you demonstrate that through your erudition and your ability to enunciate and talk about these things and everything. And that's why I think you've been a success, and I will continue to be so, because you have that ability. But I'm looking for the hidden sparks, the reasons behind the passion, because the passion's there, that's obvious. Okay. Were you driven by, where's your ambition lie? Is it driven by a want for financial success? Is it driven by a need to connect to others and share that passion? Or is it, or are there other elements to it? Do you know what I mean? Because I think I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this, because I spoke to Adam Parsons, the manager we both know, who's the manager of Saxon and various other people, the Black Star, a very, very great friend of mine. Yeah. And I asked him this question, and he found it hard to answer, because he didn't really know where. And I think this is kind of part of the answer to the question, is that quite often we don't know what that is. We don't know where that drive comes from. We just feel compelled. Are you able to put a finger on that stuff?
It's difficult, I must admit, like Mr. Parsons did. It's difficult to put your finger on it. But I think what the important thing is with this particular question is to look at the motives behind why you do it. Sometimes for some people like him, it's just blind. It's like, I am compelled to do this by almost like from a terrestrial point of view, where you have no control. You just have to go with it because it will take you regardless whether you want it or not. I can't leave music alone. I never will be able to leave music alone. But my motivation is getting something that I love to your ears. That is completely my motivation. Now, whether that makes me commercially successful is another question. It may not. But when you have a mission in life, when you take it upon yourself to have a mission, it kind of happens anyway. So, it's like my coaching is my coaching service that I do as a business comes from the unbridled will or want to get people to understand the story, the narrative of music, not the narrative in the lyrics, but the narrative of the story that surrounds that artist.
The human interaction, the human understanding, and the reasons behind.
Absolutely. And that doesn't change for music with me as a presenter, because that's exactly what I want to do. I want people to listen to that song and love it as much as I love it, or turn on to something that they didn't. I love it when you play something and it exceeds the expectation. Like when I'm DJing live, that's a whole different thing. It's that I have 3 songs ahead in my head. That's how I play the story. And I'm watching the floor, the reaction, the responses, the faces, sometimes the affirmations. People look around, they smile at you and put their thumbs up. And then it's like, you've got to drop that track at the absolute right time. I'll give you an example. Stone Dead Festival, when it was on last time, I think it was 2019, when we met up in the garden in that really hot summer. And the night before, I DJ'd at the Friday night rock party. So I'm the last DJ on. Pressure's on me to finish the night off well. And it was that connection I was not trying to find. I knew the crowd pleaser songs. You're not trying to educate people. I don't want to educate people. I want to entertain them. And I want them to feel good when they leave somewhere, or when they turn over the station after I've finished, or turn to the next DJ when I've finished presenting. And there was a moment when I knew at a rock party, there's one song that does it every single time, and it's War Pigs, Black Sabbath.
Yeah,
right.
I can see that.
The crowd connection. This is something I learned back in Corfu. Was that call and response? You know it yourself as a performer, Toby, when you're there and you get them shouting your song lyrics back at you. Even though I don't own the lyrics to War Pigs and I had no influence how they were written, I own the moment. And there's a deep satisfaction of when you drop the music and let them take it. There's that call and response, and that connection. That's another, for me, that's another massive motivation.
And that sounds very, very, very similar, completely similar, if not exactly the same, to being a musician in a rock and roll band. Mm-hmm. So I would argue and posit the idea that really what you really are is a performer. And I think because my question, reason why it's a bit of a loaded question, I realize, but I think what I'm trying to get to here is that if you try to explain the complexities of the music business to someone who wanted to try and enter it, and they say, for instance, had an interest in being a DJ or a presenter like yourself, or a jock or a live DJ or whatever, I don't think it's the same as like having a kind of rose-tinted view of being playing guitar in a rock and roll band, because the heartache and the difficulty and the commitment and the sacrifice that goes hand in hand with doing something that we do and we have been involved with is almost tantamount to a level of madness, in my opinion. Because I've often said this, it's a bit like being, and I don't mean this to sound sort of like I guess, too trite, but I often sort of assimilate it to being a drug addict. What I imagine it must feel like to be a drug addict, that it's hard to ignore it. You can't get away from it. And we end up doing something. It's a bit like, you know, the definition of madness, isn't it? He's like repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Yes. You know, this is the definition of madness. And I think a lot of musicians and people like you in all sorts of different sectors of the music business, the entertainment business, go through that thing that no matter, even though you've spent a load of money buying your equipment, buying all your records, no one seems to give a toss, and you're dragging your carcass to some gig somewhere to do in front of a load of people that don't appreciate you being there because really they just want to get pissed or whatever. It's like that question. It's like, I always have friends of mine, he said, why do you still do it? Why do you carry on? Why? And I'm like, I can't explain it. I just know I have to.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And so what would you say? So bringing this whole thing, what would you say to someone who's listening to this conversation and listening to your very insightful sort of commentary on your own personal experience? What would you say is the single most important thing that you require to pursue a life doing what you do if they want it, given the nature of the difficulty of it all?
Accept failure, or accept failing to achieve what you believe you deserve. Because the minute that you make peace with that, the minute it makes you a better performer or a better presenter or a better DJ. You know, even whether that's in your delivery or the way that you interact with people, excuse me, or whether that's your technical ability, whether prepared to be prepared to make wrong decisions and accept those decisions as wrong. Be at those parties where, you know, you're one song away from a punch up, an actual physical punch up. And I've been there. I've been at those situations where it's like, you know, to my mate Tony, load up the van. I think it's going to kick off in a minute.
Really?
Yeah, get our money and run, because it's like a fight's brewing. There's nothing you can do about these things. And you can sit there afterwards and go, oh, maybe if I had played those songs for them, they would have been happy. The amount of things and the amount of things that I've done, and another thing as well is to take risks. You've got to take risks.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of a risk that I used to take on a regular basis. Someone would come to me. I'll be busily looking through my CDs or my records, depending on what year it was. And they'd go, they come up and go, first of all, they've got no manners because they're drunk. And they'd go, there's this one really good one. He's got any quo? And I went, no, mate, they're shit. I can't stand them. Which isn't the truth. I love them. I love the quo. Yeah. I went, nah, not playing it. It's crap. And he went, look. And he pointed to the dance floor to say it was empty, and it was rammed. You couldn't get another person on that dance floor. And looked at it and say, look, you're going to ruin it, but if you don't play the quo. And I went, look, pal, I'm not fucking playing the quo. Bugger off. Yeah. And as he turned away, I slipped a quo record on. And it was deeper down. And then, you know, that yeah. And I watched his face go from absolute anger and disappointment to the biggest grin in the room. And I won him. And I used to do this all the time to people. It was almost like let's see how far I can push this with the audience. No, I'm not playing that. It's rubbish.
Performance again, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It's performance. I wouldn't, you know, if you come up to me and said, can you play that record? I wouldn't go, no, Toby, it's rubbish. I'm not playing that. What were you thinking asking me that? But I might do because it's you. But it's about underselling and then exceeding the expectation. Yeah. So I undersold to him. I said, I'm not playing Status Quo on New Year's Eve. It's shit. It's a bad idea. When in fact, it was the best idea I'd heard all evening. I thought, oh, yes, cracking, brilliant. And then I'd find myself almost second guessing these people. So they'd come up and ask for something, and it'd be the song that's coming on next.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Get in the mood, understanding people. It's not about you playing records to people. It's about reading your audience, understanding your audience, and loving your audience as well. Enough to have a relationship.
I totally get that, and I think that's a very smart, probably hard fought for set of experiences that you've managed to pull together and has formed what I'd call your battle chest. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, like I've said many times on these programs, that the biggest factor that connects every single part of the music business, the entertainment business, the film business, you name it, media, you know, is the people. It is a people business, and you do yourself an injustice and make a major mistake by forgetting that the audience are there. And a lot of people do. The record industry at large is really guilty of this. They're guilty of ignoring the very people they've been trying to sell the music to, because it's largely populated by salespeople and lawyers and accountants. They're not actually people who understand or have any real interest in understanding the motivations behind people's passions and love of the art. So I think that's a really, really interesting insight to the way that you beautifully described as well. I think that connective tissue. Because here's the thing, and I've been meaning to talk to you about this for quite some time, and I think this is really important, and a lot of the reason why I think I hold you in high regard, and I think you deserve it, is that I've spent most of my life as a musician in and out of backstages.
Yeah.
I've been in and out of radio stations. I've been in and out of television stations. I've been roundly ignored and applauded from the highest treetops and everything in between. The one core elemental thing that remains, in my view, that is really, really important to me as that artist who experiences both ends of that scale, is that I am respected and treated as a decent person, human being, and not completely, sort of kicked into touch the second I'm met because there's some kind of reputation that precedes, or they don't like the music they've heard before me coming in, or whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest melting pot of that, and the most focused, sharpest example of this, is when you go say something like backstage at Download, where the atmosphere is already heady. It's the biggest heavy rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, rocks festival on the planet, the most highly regarded rock festival next to Glastonbury, I would argue, and probably a couple of other festivals, you know, Coachella being one of them. But I would say that from a hard rock and metal perspective, there's nowhere better. No, it's the mecca for all of us people who love that music, right?
Absolutely.
But it's also full of what I would call in the vernacular wankers, who sadly spend most of their time posturing and pretending that they belong to something that doesn't really exist, and that they've got the answers and that they know better than everyone else, and their opinion and their trousers, who are a little bit lower than mine, are probably far more, you know, characterizing, you know, what was supposed to be happening. You know why? All that bullshit. And, you know, and it's hard to navigate it, and I've always found it very difficult. And so what I've always tended to do in my history is gravitate towards people that don't behave like that are there for all the correct reasons, which is to celebrate the music, to meet people, to be friendly, to allow everyone's opinion to make some sort of sense, and possibly learn from those opinions. And there's very few people that I've come across in the radio entertainment business that fulfill that hope, and you're one of those people that definitely do. And I can remember when we first met properly back in Download. I remember, you know, we had an initial conversation, and I've learned over the years as an artist, having suffered and celebrated, if you like, I've learned to recognize that in people immediately within probably the first 2 or 3 seconds of someone opening their mouth. Because usually if they don't like you, or they've decided that they think your music's crap, or for whatever reason, even though they've never met you, you get a limp handshake and someone looks past you immediately. And that to me is a red rag to a bull. And I make a mental note of saying, okay, well, you know what, you're going to treat me like that, then I won't give you the time of day either, because I don't want to be treated like that. So do you recognize that? Is that something that you've experienced? Are you aware of the position that someone like you in that kind of environment has the responsibility of that?
I understand completely that there is a machine and the mechanics of the machine and how it works. I think as long as you understand that, and you go into these things, like the first time I ever went to Download, I'd be interviewing 25, 30 bands a day. It's an insane amount of conversations. But what I learned almost immediately from that is to connect on a human level completely. Right. I'm not bothered whether you sell 50 million albums or whether you sell 500 albums to your family. Doesn't matter to me. It's about that connection to another person in an extraordinary set of circumstances. So when you sat there interviewing, the people that I have interviewed over the years, and not to get, everyone goes about these fanboy moments. It's extremely rare, if not almost there's probably only ever a couple of times where that's happened for me. And those fanboy moments is when you suddenly realize that you're in a situation of a conversation with somebody that you've only really known from afar. And it's that fear of getting to know them at a closer distance, I think is what creates that situation. So I understand the politics. I understand the mechanics. I understand that you start out at a certain point and then you build trust by doing good interviews, delivering on your promises. If you say you're going to do something, do it. I understand that when you first go to download, all you interview is the people on the emerging stages. You don't get any headliners. You don't get anybody on the main stage, and it takes years of trust and delivery. And trust and delivery are the two things. If you can put on from them two promises, then you eventually get someone will go. I remember it happening the first time it happened to me. I was working download, really, really busy. Coming back, just getting a cup of coffee very, very quickly. And they went, you got 5 minutes? I went, oh, yeah, I was going to go to the loo, but what can I do for you? Got Skid Row outside. Do you want to talk to them? And I just went, I think I'd be an idiot if I said no, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
And then that was my first sort of step up. But I gave it my 110%. I had no preparation, but I know enough about them to talk to them.
Yeah.
I had no preparation about that. And that was download saying to me, we see that you work hard and that you deliver on what you're doing. Here's an opportunity. And every year it's just got that little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Each time that I've gone back to the festival and worked there. And about connecting for me as well. I walk in that room, I walk in that press room, and you've been in it tons of times. It's like a cattle market. There's just that much going on and noisy and people shouting across to each other and everything. It's a real bear pit sometimes. But the first thing I do is I go and say hello to everybody. I go and make a coffee. And if I see someone without one, I'll make them one. I'll go, do you want a cup of tea? Like, I've interviewed people and they're like, can you just give me a minute before we do this? And I'm like, yeah. Have you had a drink today? And I'll go, no. I go, do you want a cup of coffee? I'll go make you a coffee. Come on, we'll have a coffee and then we'll have a chat.
Yeah.
And it kind of disarms them a little bit because they're expecting business this all day. I can't do that. I've never been able to do that. I've always had to go, I understand the rules of the game and I'm willing to play it. But I also understand that we are human beings playing this game. And
it is a game. And I think it's important to point out that it does, me, I'm 30 years into this career, longer than 30 years now. And it is, it is the best description I can give the music business. It is that it is a game. And it's how you play that game. And if you choose to be dirty with a ball and boot it in someone's face, then they'll probably come and lamp you back. There's all those kinds of analogies, those kind of metaphors. And I think, there is a really important point about anyone that's considering sort of trying to get into the music business, that you undo yourself very, very quickly if you behave badly. That's what I think. And I think absolutely you only get away with it for a very short space of time. And this has been proven time and time again with musicians that behave badly at the height of their success. And then when they no longer are successful, find it very hard to kind of keep up relationships because the bad behavior precedes them. And I think this is, unfortunately, these are the truths, these are the facts, and it just comes down to how much people are willing to forgive, how much they're willing to take on, and how much they applaud or celebrate or whatever these kinds of behaviors. And I think it's just a very, very important point. And I think you again talk about that so clearly, and because really ultimately we're all trying to get on, aren't we? I mean, I think that's the music business entirely. Yeah. We're all trying to make a way forward and trying to sort of figure ourselves out.
And absolutely, and just to reiterate something, that when I connect with an artist over a long period of time, so I'll talk to them 10 years ago, then I'll talk to them 5 years ago, then last week, and we'll connect every now and again. There's a few people that I do that with. I've interviewed them a few times. And because I have that investment in them and they trust me,
yeah,
I'll get another interview, but I also support them through the less successful times as well, the times when they're struggling, the times when their confidence lacks a little bit, when they're like, I'm not quite sure whether I should do this or not, and then they come and talk to me because they know that the relationship isn't just about what I can get from you. It's about a connection. It's about a human connection. It's an investment. You invest as an interviewer. I invest it in my interviewees, and I want them to succeed. I don't want anybody to fail in music at all. And it's really important to understand that from an artist's point of view. When you first, you get the young bands turning up at Download and they're nervous and they get unleashed into this press area where it's like, shit, what's going on? What do I do? I'm always there with the nurturing arm going, look, just relax. This is a sales opportunity for you to tell the world what you are about and who you are. That's all it is. I'm not going to trip you up about your past or question you about things like that. It's all about you. I want to tell your story. So you make people relax. And when you have that connection and an investment, people will remember you. They'll never forget you.
No, that's a very, very good point. And I think it's testament to you as a human being. And I think, that ultimately, I think, no matter what walk of life you're in, the need, and I think never more than ever before with the situation we're all currently going through, and we've discussed this before, the need to sort of be respectful and try to appreciate people for what they are and what they bring and all that sort of thing, because everyone feels fragile. And I think, the weird thing about the music business, the entertainment business, I think specifically the music business, is there's a lot of fragility in artists and a lot of fragility in the people that populate other areas as well, because it's all so tentative, isn't it? Or it could all crash around your ears if you don't watch it. 1 minute you're high, 1 minute you're low. You don't know where it's going to go. It's also unknown. It's the journey is incredibly exciting, but the very nature of that exciting journey means that it may well fail more likely than it will actually succeed. And so there's a sort of very strange relationship that you build as someone who involves himself in the music business on every level. So I'd like to bring that into sharp focus. Can you, or are you willing to tell us whatever you want to, really? But what other walks of life do you involve yourself in? How have you been able to balance your love of the music business with making a living? I presume that, I don't know, you tell us, how do you balance that stuff? How do you keep going in the music business? Is it full time? Are you part time? How does all that work?
Well, I'll tell you where it started, and it started a couple of years back with somebody you know very, very well, Mr. Bruce Dickinson.
Mm-hmm.
Your band, your former bandmate, but continual friend, obviously Waterbear College of Music. And I had a conversation with you and our mutual friend Rob Town as well, who was doing a master's degree at the time. And I had a conversation with Bruce on the telephone after we sort of initially connected. And he said, I'd love you to come to Waterbear and I'd love you to do a master's degree. And I thought, well, I'm a stick of shit, really, when it comes to academia. I haven't done anything since '93, and even in '93, I hadn't done bugger all but them, really, other than play drums and drink beer. So what do I know? And they said, well,
two fantastic aspects of life, though.
Absolute motivation points right there, mister. Brilliant stuff. But so I was like, I kind of like I offered some resistance to begin with. It was like, what do you want me for? I mean, and he said, well, you've had a lot of experience in the music industry over the years and your connection with music. All we want to do is offer you an academic polish to that by offering you a master's degree. So I sat and had to think about it. I was going through a tough time myself personally at the time, questioning, the universal question of why, what, and all those sort of things. And I come to like a juncture and I just went, you know what? I need to throw myself fully into music and step away from it being a hobby that was eating at me. I remember sitting in the office one day. It was just funny enough. We're talking about Download Festival. And on the Sunday, I'd interviewed Ice-T, the rapper Ice-T. It was he was there with Body Count. And it was a massive interview for me that day. It was huge, followed by In This Moment. So it was like that one and then that one. It was just like blew my head. I thought I'd reached the Michael Parkinson of the rock and metal world, at that point. And then the next morning, I'm sat in the office at work and they'd have the usual, what did you do the weekend? I'm not really interested. I just want an opportunity to tell you what I've been doing kind of conversation. And they were like, yeah, when I went here the weekend, it was like this and it was great and like that. What did you do, Adam? I was at Download Festival. I don't know what are you doing there? Not obviously, I've told them where I was going, but they didn't pay any attention. I said, oh, I'm doing some interviews. Oh, did you interview them? So Ice-T yesterday. Who's that? And I just went, oh, God. And then the phone went and someone said, the toilets in this class, the toilets next to this classroom are blocked. Can you send someone down to go? And I was like, my world just crashed around my ears. I just went, I can't keep going from this to this all the time. My weekends are just amazing and my weekdays are so mundane and I'm not interested.
But what sorry, but what was it that you were doing? What was your work? What was the line of work?
I was in facilities management. I was in facilities management for about 15 years.
Right.
Looking after buildings for different projects and so on and so forth. And at the weekend, I'd be DJing or I'd be, doing some radio or interviewing.
So it's what most people would call a proper job. You had that kind of like day job. I mean, and I think, this is another mystery that needs to be revealed to a lot of people, I think, really. And people watching this and listen to this will recognize this because I've said this before. But, I think there is this reality that even some successful bands, a lot of those members are working day jobs, are working. I mean, there are a number of people that shall remain nameless. I know, for instance, can sell out a place like, I don't know, Old Town and Country Club in London, or they can sell the Cocoa out in London, or they can play KK Steel Mill or those sort of size venues, but they're all going back to a day job on the week to make ends meet because nobody makes any money out of that, or it's very, very scant because it's just, and people go, that can't be true. How can they possibly? Well, because that's the music business. That is the music business. It is not what you think it is until the top 1% have that kind of glory and have that experience, or the top 3% maybe. But the reality is the vast majority of people, artists, DJs like yourself, or managers or agents or whatever, a lot of people at the lower levels, the more low-hanging fruit, we're all dealing with a kind of general normal life, trying to keep ourselves afloat.
Absolutely. I've been and watched bands on tour with huge bands who have been living on motorway sandwiches for 3 weeks on the tour because they can't afford to go for a meal. Standard. And if they don't sell T-shirts, they don't eat. And it's that happens more than it doesn't happen. Obviously, like at the other end of the scale, you've got multi-platinum selling bands selling millions of units and shifting thousands of T-shirts. But I couldn't get my head around the change every 2 minutes of one to the other. My passion. I was constantly thinking about music, even when I was at work. So in the finish, something had to give. And when I had that conversation with Bruce, it was like, well, there's one or two things I could do here. I could run away from this situation, or I could run at it with the same amount of passion, the same amount of drive as music has driven me throughout my entire life. And I just went, and I took the latter decision. And boy, oh boy, was it the most painful experience. I won't kid anybody now. Doing a master's degree is a nightmare because it asks you more questions than it answers. What I mean by that is that you're constantly questioning your ability to do it. And I spoke to Rob Town a few times about it during that period because he'd done it the year previous to me. And was kind of like encouraging me from the sidelines, going, look, I know it's painful, but just stick with it, do it. And I spent that entire period at least the first half of the course with crushing imposter syndrome. Like, why am I here? I'm not worth doing it. I'm not valuable enough to do this. And I thought, shut up, Hayward. Just crack on, son. You got to do it. You've invested a lot of money and a lot of time in this.
Yeah.
Just get on with it. So I did. And I came away, and you can see at the bottom of the screen here, I'm Adam Hayward, MA now, rather than just Adam Hayward. So,
which is an enormous achievement.
The certificate is there to prove it as well.
Great. So I mean, okay. So we'll round up this. We'll round this interview up with this final question because I think this is really important. I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
That is, do not underestimate that. That is an incredible achievement. I certainly couldn't do it. I really couldn't. I don't feel it was something that I am such admiration for anyone who's it. I'd like to two-part question. What do you think that achievement has given you? That's the first one.
Good question.
And I also now want to know what's in the future for Adam.
Okay. Well, that getting a master's degree has demonstrated to me that by applying myself to something and committing to something as much as I've committed to music, I can do anything. There isn't anything that I can't achieve. If I say I want to, I'm not going to be the next Versace model. I've got to live within the realms of reality. But if there's something that I think that I really would like to do, it's a matter of planning, execution, and persistence that are required to get the job done. The master's degree demonstrated that to me in the greatest way possible by constantly grading me, constantly reviewing me, constantly getting myself to question it. And what that's given me is that confidence, that affirmation, that, to affirm that I am capable of doing things that I want to do. Where it's taken me is down a completely new rabbit hole. And it's an amazing rabbit hole. I'm now in a position where I'm helping artists understand their own narrative, connecting to their own stories. So I'll take, we've all seen the band bio, and this is like a prime example I use all the time. You look at a band bio and they go, we started out in 1987 and then such and such guitarist left in 89. He was shit, so we changed him for such and such. And we had a fight. We split up for 2 years. And you're like, it's death by Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It's not engaging. It's just a series of information. That's all it is. So what the work I'm doing now is I'm helping artists to create their narrative, not their music, not their lyrics, but their narrative, their story. And
who they are.
Yeah, who they are, understanding that story through writing a really engaging, emotive bio that helps their fans connect to them, but more importantly, helps them to connect to their story. And when they can connect to their story with confidence, they then can do better interviews. Because what's the worst thing that happens in an interview? Someone comes in and go, tell us about the album, where did it record it and all that. And they're like, I don't know what to say. So I'm just either going to be really quiet or I'm going to say something stupid. Whereas if they're connected to that story, they have the ability to be able to go, well, it's a great question. And when we first got together, it was almost like an impossible task to record this album under the circumstances, but we did it. And then tell me how they did it. And then tell them. So I'm going, shit, this means a lot to you. And then I'm with you on the journey of this story, this story. And I want you to win. You're the protagonist, and I want the protagonist to be the victor.
Yeah.
And it's that, and that's the kind of work that I'm doing now with artists. And I'm doing it with the college students as well. I've been invited back. I've just recently written a blog for Waterbear, which I'm really proud of, because things like that don't happen unless you make them happen, or these opportunities are given to you So I'm eternally grateful to Bruce and everybody at Waterbear for that. Other colleges have started to see what I'm doing, and they've gone, come along, come and engage with our students. You know, our artist development at Access Creative College, I'm working with them quite a bit at the minute. And again, it's about story and about connectivity and about understanding themselves, because they're at a very young age, these kids.
Yeah.
They're like 15, 16 years old, and they're just getting into discovering who they are. So I'm kind of helping them to discover their stories without affecting their story.
Yeah.
And I use this really lovely analogy to describe what I do. And is that you're a paper boat. As an artist, you're a paper boat on a very still lake, and the wind will take you forward in your direction. But occasionally, that direction will veer to the left or the right, just ever so slightly, through circumstance, through opportunity, through risk. And all I do, without affecting the course, is gently tap it either side. So I don't affect your course of your career, but I gently, just occasionally, when things need tucking in or things need adapting very slightly, I just tap it either side without affecting the creativity of the band.
That's great.
And that's
what
I do.
Lovely. Well, listen, mate, that's a fantastic point to finish on, because you know that shows how much how sensitive you are, and how sympathetic you are to people. And I think that's one of the key things about you that I've always loved about you is your sense of humanity. You're a real humanist, and you bring people into your world, and that's the golden thing. You know, the magic lies there. You've managed to harness yourself. You understand yourself probably more than you probably really understand. If you know what I mean, if that makes any sense. And I think certainly from my point of view, you know, I will always love engaging with you. And I think everyone will love this conversation. It's been really, really interesting. I thank you for the time, and I thank you for being so honest.
Thank you, Toby. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you know, likewise, you've been a really positive force in my life over the last few years. Even at those moments when I wasn't feeling so great, you'd ring me up and say something daft down the phone to me, just to give me a bit of a pickup. They haven't been forgotten, and they're not. They're completely appreciated. So thank you very much.
Not a problem. Not a problem. It's what friendship's about, mate. Well, listen, thank you so much. I will love you and leave you. And yes, folks, say thank you to and goodbye to Mr. Adam Hayward.
Thank you very much.